Latest Mandalorian episode. We see the Mando traveling in his broken down ship. It's making a bunch of junky noises. It's great. He doesn't have a super flashy ship. His ship can take damage. It's a struggle, you know? It adds to his character, makes you care about him more. We see little Yoda in this crawl space, plugging in wires. There's a really cool humor part here where the Mando character was being very, very calm and very patient, and he just kept repeating himself. I loved how he would say the exact same thing over and over, which is something we hadn't heard in the whole series. Him saying, take the blue one, put it into the red one. Take the red one, put it where the blue one was. And then he just kept saying that over and over again. And he was being a good dad, and it was super funny. And then they were setting up the expectation that if you put them together, you're going to get shocked. And of course, obviously, little Yoda shocks himself. Later on, we see them eating a bit of food. Mando actually lifts his helmet slightly to eat. We go to this cool, dark, musty bar with these Ponda Baba types, and they're counting money. They're going to kill and eat this screaming, furry rodent. There's lots of infighting between them. They have straggly, unkempt white hair. It's really easy to pick them as bad guys. They hear a noise, and it's old Smiley, Gina Carano. She comes in for a cool action scene. It's great because it's like most of the action in the show, it's not just one person coming in with a god complex able to just obliterate everybody. There's a struggle back and forth. She misses shots, they miss shots. She does this really cool move where she does like a commando roll and grabs one of the Ponda Baba guys' bodies off the ground, and you can see that the shots would have hit where she was if not for her grabbing them and using that as a shield. She runs back and throws it at them. It's a really clever technique, and it made the combat scene just fantastic. After the scene, the little rodent comes up to her, and this is such a smart idea because, number one, it resolves the tension of this thing before it was going to get eaten, and now she's giving it food. Number two, it's cute, and it's funny, and it shows her as a good person because she's nice to this thing and gives it food. And also, it lets her tell a bit of some expository dialogue where she says, yeah, I gotta get this money back to the rightful owners. So you know that she's a good person, and she has an animal here to talk to. And it also sets up the end of the episode, which pays off the relationship with this little furry thing. So another fantastic opening scene from The Mandalorian. We see old Mando decide to land and meet old Carl Weathers and Smiley, who is extra smiley right now. I'm wondering, are they going to have like a love interest later on? I could kind of see them together. She's buff and strong, but she's really pretty, and we don't know what this guy looks like, but she seems to smile at him a lot. I don't know if that's just how she acts. I've said in every episode I'm not a big fan of her acting. I think physically she's great. She's great in the action scenes, but delivering dialogue is really touch and go, and a lot of the lines come out cringy. Anyways, when they land, there's this mechanic who gives them a suspicious look, which ends up paying off near the end of this episode. We see the market, but it's like a positive market. There's nice music, it's bright, and people are happy. They're talking about how they've really transformed this place and left a positive mark on it. They go and they see a protocol droid teaching at a school to some kids, and there's the old, I think it's like that blue and white map screen that we saw in like Empire Strikes Back, maybe in A New Hope or Return of the Jedi, but it's sort of that big grid. That was pretty cool. It's another way of taking something from the Star Wars past and showing it in a new way, not just repeating yourself. So Yoda, little baby Yoda, ends up sitting here, and we get more and more food humor. Like, there's more food jokes in this with little baby Yoda, and already in this episode, than most shows in North America. It's like, than most anime. Usually that's something you see in anime all the time, just constantly obsessed with food jokes. Anyways, Yoda really wants his kids food. The kid doesn't even give him one. And then this cool, magical, mystical music comes up, and it's all for the little baby Yoda to steal the kid's food, and he takes all of it. And I'm wondering, this little baby Yoda steals eggs, so it's eating unborn children, unborn babies. It stole the whole roll, and it's not like he just took one and gave it back or shared it. He's just eating it all. Is he like on the line of the dark side, or is it just because he's a kid or a baby? I don't think so. I don't think they'll have him on the dark side, but you never know. They're pretty smart in the show. They could come up with something interesting like that. I'm also wondering, does Mando starve this thing? Do we need to call Child Protection Services? Mando heads off with Carl Weathers, and look who it is. It's the first bounty target from the very first episode. The guy doing all the jokes that he captures and puts in the carbonite freezing. He actually like blows this weird mist when he sees Mando. And another setup in this episode is like a video game where you have time for your ship while it's being repaired. We're going to go on a side quest. So it's very set up in video game structure. And also like the technology they use, which isn't green screens, it's these LED screens so that the actors can actually see everything and you can light the actors with it. But a lot of the terrain that they make is actually created using the Unreal Engine, which is, if you don't play video games, that's used in a huge majority of video games, and it's used to show like real cutting edge photorealistic landscapes. And it can do procedural generation. So you could say, just put like a bunch of rocks and it'll make like big rocks, small rocks, and it'll look really, really natural, or trees or mountains or anything. So you can really quickly populate an area with the backgrounds that they would need in a show like this. So the side quest for this week is another Imperial base. And the whole point of it is that this place is doing so well, like they showed us with the market and the school, made you care about the kids and everything. And that if they could just get rid of this one last base, the planet will be free and they could be used as a real trading hub. And it's going to be like having a monorail in your town. They tell Mando that they're supposed to be just a really small skeleton crew, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. The four of them are going to go, Smiley, Weathers, Mando, and our little neck-puffing guy for a little bit of comic relief. There's this whole dynamic where Carl Weathers says that this guy used to work for him and then disappeared. So I guess he stole from him. And he has like a huge debt. Like he owes several lifetimes of debt to Carl Weathers. And Carl Weathers is like giving it to him the whole episode. Like, you better do it, or I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to put you back in jail. And he's also bartering with him to make him do things. Like, this guy doesn't want to come help them, but he says, I'll knock, I think he says 100 years off of your debt. And they're constantly doing this, where I thought, this guy's totally going to turn on them. And I was really surprised that they didn't. Maybe they'd be too predictable. It's also a good red herring because the mechanic looked really suspicious in the beginning, and he's the one that ends up turning on them in the end of the episode. So I think this was nice to kind of distract the audience from that suspicious guy and kind of give someone else you think the whole time could possibly turn. But especially with, he has no interest in doing this. He finds it dangerous. So I think that was a nice way that they didn't go too predictable. So they get to the Imperial base. They realize that there's more troopers than they thought. It's not just a skeleton crew. There were a whole bunch of stormtroopers that Mando had to deal with. They say something else like, because when Fishman wants to stay outside in the parked car, and while they go inside, they threaten him like, oh, just let us know what happens when the lava tide comes in. Maybe they were just joking. I mean, it is like a big canyon, and it does look sort of volcanic. And there is a volcanic core at the center, so their plan is, I think, like overload the core or something and have the volcano just like vaporize the whole place. Because they go past on the top of the building and they see this, they set up this vehicle. And little fish man, a big fat fish man, he's like, oh, look at that thing. Let's take that. We'll sell it on the black market. So you're establishing this vehicle that they're going to use later. You're showing that this guy's really motivated by money. And you're showing that Mando, when he responds with, it's going to be vaporized like everything else. He's all business. I just got to do my side quest so I can get it along with my main quest. Kind of remind me a bit of the Bounty Hunter episode where they were on that hallway set on that prison ship, which was a really cool episode with Bill Burr. They're sneaking around some hallways, but then they end up getting to this volcanic core, which looks really cool. They force the fisherman to go onto the scary sort of platform, like what Obi-Wan did in A New Hope when he was turning off the tractor beams. They even have stormtroopers kind of walking by and having a bit of dialogue, and they really nail that sound from back then too. It's pretty cool because the fishman kind of sets it to blow. He's scared. They force him to go out there, and it's getting more dangerous. Now they have to get out of here. So the stakes are rising, and now they're trying to find an escape. They're going back the way they came. They see a bunch of stormtroopers. They come across these Imperials who are like working on some computer system. So they all know that this place is going to blow up, and they say something like, we have to purge the drive. And then when Mando and the team, when the four of them come in there, they say to each other something like, make sure you destroy it, right? So there's a bit of a fight, and this is where a huge reveal happens, and the music is telling you what's going to happen, and all of a sudden you see these tanks there's all these tanks, kind of like a Bacta tank, and there's some kind of creature. It's hard to tell exactly what it is, but the music they're playing is very reminiscent of the Emperor's theme. It's sort of like that's sort of like low druid, creepy, mysterious, ancient power kind of stuff. And it's something that they're trying to hide. So you're thinking, okay, so there could be a new enemy. What are they growing? Like a bunch of Darth Vaders? Are they growing a bunch of Palpatines or Snokes, like Snokes in a jar? It's interesting how seeing a bunch of Snokes in a jar in Rise of the Skywalker was so stupid. And here, you go, oh, this actually makes sense. Maybe they are growing some kind of an army. It makes sense. Even though the Imperial guys said that they were going to destroy the evidence, they ended up finding a hologram who gives a bunch of information. And he says, he's talking to Grand Moff Gideon, right? The guy that we thought died in the TIE fighter in season 1. And this Imperial in the hologram is saying, we've had many catastrophic failures after we did have an entire fortnight of promising effects. He says that the bodies rejected the blood, but he doubts they'll find a donor with a higher M count. So I'm thinking like, oh, midichlorians. Okay, sure. Recommend they stop experimentation. Predicts that any new volunteers are also going to die. And he's saying now that the lab is out of the blood, he says the child is small and I was only able to harvest a limited amount without killing him. If the experiments are to continue, we would again require access to the donor. So now you're thinking, so are they collecting little Yodas? They called this a child with a high midichlorian count. They have a baby Yoda. It's a child. The Imperials want it. That makes sense. So we're all the Yoda creatures, super high in midichlorians. That's a simplified way of looking at it, but I guess it makes sense. I mean, Yoda was a Grandmaster Jedi or whatever he was, level 1002. And then there was another female Yoda named Yaddle in the prequels. So I think that would work with fans, like, you know, from the mainstream to the hardcore would believe in that. It was a nice way to answer a few questions, but then ask a few more and create an exciting moment. And then this is when they also realize that Moff Gideon guy is still alive, and we have a big action scene. So for some reason, when they go, realizes Moff Gideon is still alive, and they go, that means something. They all kind of come to this realization where Mando's like, I gotta get out of here. So I guess he has to go back and get Yoda, little baby Yoda. I don't know why all of a sudden he needs to go, but this is when I thought, man, the female character, or the actor, she looks good in all the action, but then she had to deliver a line to him where she says to the Mando character, Jetpack, you're faster that way. And she actually read it worse than I just said it there. And it's like, oh, she's good, but just when she's talking, it's hard. Acting's hard. And this is a big stage. This is a big show. But you just really notice it. Mando's running around and he comes across, I like how he's running down the hall because he's in a hurry. He kind of comes across these stormtroopers, fires at one, fires at the other. And then as he's running by, kind of without breaking stride, I like that he checks on the first guy because maybe he didn't kill him. He shoots a lot of people. They don't always die. It's not like he lined up a headshot or something. I just thought it was a really nice touch that makes it still feel like the place he's in is dangerous. And the things he's doing are dangerous. Now you've got Carl Weathers, Fishman, and Smiley on their own. This feels a lot more dangerous because now the base is on alert and they've lost Mando, their best fighter. They come across just a bunch of troopers and they're pinned down. I really like what the Fishman guy was doing because he was doing this thing where he was undercover and then he'd pop his head up, he'd pop his head up, and then shoot. Which, if you're playing a video game, again, another video game comparison with this show, that's what you do. You hide behind cover and you pop up constantly and then you take a shot. And he also kind of reminded me of a fish when he was doing it too. It's just like something I haven't seen in an action movie, you know, because there's a lot of times where you see these standoffs and people are like hiding and they're poking out and they're shooting, but it just kind of feels like the actors are thinking more about their lines and their dialogue than let's make this believable. Just randomly ever so often standing out. I thought that was something I hadn't seen before and was really clever. Now the vehicle that they saw before, this comes into play. Gina Carano, old Smiley, says, cover me, like every action movie, and she runs over. She gets into this thing, drives it back, opens the door, and I think that the line they gave her would have been a really great sort of Princess Leia line when they're escaping the first Death Star. And she says, what are you waiting for? An invitation? Move. But she just doesn't really have that spark. I hate that I'm always criticizing her acting, but She's an MMA fighter, like she's an actor now, but that was her profession. She didn't grow up doing this. She works great in action scenes. Limited dialogue, but again, it's the last time I mention it. They go off to escape. They're blocked by a door. They decide that they need to, now because they're at the top of this base, they're just going to, race this thing down, straight down. They flatten the fishman speeder that drove them there, which is pretty funny. And then you have this fun little chase scene through a canyon that has a lot of speed, a lot of twists and turns. You've got swoop bikes flying out there. I saw Greg Wyshynski on Twitter. He's a hockey and wrestling guy. He said that his favorite Easter egg is that when the speeder bikes explode, they break into these 3 parts that I think when the original swoop bike was released, it would also break into those same 3 parts. Like, what a nice little detail that isn't there just for people going, I know that. It's more like a little hidden thing that, pay attention, you happen to know it's there. One of the speeders comes up on the side of it, and Smiley rams this guy into the cliff wall. There's an explosion because the bike is exploding, but the explosion of the bike also serves to cover that for you to dispatch of a guy that way means you just took his body and grinded it into a wall. Can you imagine like a more painful death? You just turn that guy into like pulled pork. Anyways, they deal with all the guys on the swoops, and now we raise the stakes. TIE fighters coming in. There's a cool moment where Carl Weathers and the TIE fighter get a lock at the same time, which we never see. In Star Wars, we've seen a million times. The little targeting computer. They're messing with their stuff. They get it, and then they shoot them. But it was cool to see them get it at the same time, and then Weathers just happens to shoot faster. Shoots the TIE fighter, but the TIE fighter is still got all this forward momentum, which is pretty cool. Something else I haven't seen in Star Wars. Things start spinning. Carl Weathers realizes, I'm going to run, and he dives to the front. It doesn't really blow off the back of their car or anything, but it was a nice little exciting moment, something new. So they get out of this canyon, which is a very, very long canyon. But there were some cool shots from the TIE fighters showing how fast they were going around the turns and stuff that they didn't really show in the close-up shots, but looked good. Made it look like you wouldn't be able to just easily gun them down. They get into the open, which is probably going to be more dangerous because the TIE fighters have no worry about smashing into a wall or anything. And then Mando comes in there in his ship, and he's got little baby Yoda, and they saves the day. He knocks off one TIE fighter, he chases another one up, straight up into the atmosphere, knocks that one down, he gets up really high, kind of cuts the engines, turns around, dives down, has a sort of a straight-on duel with the last TIE fighter. He's spinning like crazy, and and waits while that TIE fighter's kind of taking the long shots, and it made me think of playing Star Wars Squadrons, and oh no, your lasers are going to run out of lasers. And Mando waits and has the patience, takes him out. What I like is that he's spinning around so much, and then little Yoda, who's eating the entire time, still has those cookies from the boy. So even though he stole the cookies, he's good at conserving them, or he stole more. Maybe he did. And then little baby Yoda pukes because of all the spinning. And then Mando's on the radio and flying the ship and wiping up the puke on this little Mando. And I thought that was a nice touch. Another single dad thing. This guy's gonna get so much lady. We see one of the old Republic pilots from the last episode, or the Spider Cave episode. He shows up and he's kind of questioning, what happened? Where are you guys? Carl Weathers isn't giving him any information. And none of the info on the big reveal. And the Republic guy can't realize he's not going to get anything out of him. Thought it was interesting. Carl Weathers said, if I find anything out, I'll be sure to send you a gram, like a hologram, like an Instagram, talking on the gram. The old rebel walks out and tries to recruit Smiley. I thought this part was kind of funny because he's trying to say we need you. You're a great fighter. And she says, I'm not a joiner, which is a really weird line. And he asks her, he's like, oh, yeah, well, you're from Alderaan, right? I served then. Makes sense because this is 15 years after Return of the Jedi, 20 years or something like that. So he looks like he probably would have been a pilot. Now he's an old guy doing more administration kind of stuff. Anyways, he then says, oh, you're from Alderaan. Did you lose anyone? The entire planet blew up. So was that an intentionally funny line? Non-intentional? Or, I guess he's trying to say, look, we're all losing people around the galaxy. You lost people, right? She goes yeah, I lost everybody. So he's trying to guilt her into it. And it seems to work, because as he walks away, he like drops this little rebel medallion or something. So maybe she'll join. Maybe she's like the Han Solo character. But I'm not a joiner, kid. Do my own thing, and I just want the reward money. So I don't know. It's like another angle. Another facet for her character. Although I wasn't really happy to see that. I promise I wouldn't say anything else, but I don't know. Maybe she'll leave and join the rebels, and I won't have to hear her read dialogue anymore. Just after the Alderaan mention and the rebellion insignia, we get a New Hope shot of a long Star Destroyer. There's a gram, on the Star Destroyer, and the suspicious mechanic from one of the opening scenes is talking on the gram with the imps. Says he planted the tracking thing because they were fixing Mando's ship. So I'm assuming they're going to track him. We see the Imperial, happy about this, is walking to somebody. Is it going to be Gideon? Opens it up. And I'm thinking like, wait, so Gideon, didn't Mando fuck up his TIE fighter? Is he going to be like scarred? Is it going to be sort of Darth Vader-y? Are they going to give him a cool costume, a cool scar? What are they going to do with him? No, he looked fine. I mean, he is wearing, as you can see above me, he's wearing like this heavy armor, but it's nothing, doesn't seem that different to me. I can't even remember if he was wearing that in the beginning, in the first season when we first saw him. Well, if he's not going to be our new Darth Vader type, what we do see in this reveal is that he's walking past and he's like, oh yeah, we'll be ready. And we see this 2 rows of these big, they're very large, troopers, I would say. Are they going to be Sith troopers? They're in this black armor. They got tubes coming out of them. There's somebody with a clipboard and a lab coat. So I would assume these are the things that were being grown in the tanks. And these are going to be like grown with midichlorian energy. And they're going to be some kind of shock trooper, Sith trooper, Darth Vader type. Something that's going to be really exciting, because I think that they're going to, when they eventually are revealed, they're going to be a good challenge. They're going to be, because this show knows how to set that stuff up. We're going to see them do some badass stuff. We're going to see them maybe take down old Smiley over there. Maybe just like bash Mando's helmet in. Maybe he's going to like rip off his helmet or something. That would really hurt. Probably catch on him. It's going to be fun. They're going to have to come up with some kind of clever way to fight them. And it's going to be fantastic. We were looking forward to it because almost everything that's been set up in the show so far has been paid off. Another great episode with great combat, fun little nostalgic Star Wars things that weren't too over the top and annoying at all. Lots of great action scenes, tons of great reveals. This is probably the biggest episode in terms of like furthering the mystery and furthering the like a different kind of story, as opposed to just go here, fight some people, and finish. So this was a little bit different. Felt like a really big episode. And I'm wondering, at some point, there has to be some cheap episodes made. But so far, there's only been the one episode I didn't really like. Way back in the first one, where it's just him and that other jerk-off, a dickhead, going to the abandoned Mos Eisley. And so far, everything else has been great. This season is actually almost better than the last one, I think. And they're doing a great job. So, thank you, Disney.